The most dangerous problems don't look like problems at all. No cheating, no fights, no obvious red flags. And yet, something feels off. Because the real danger is what you're not trained to notice. Welcome to Female Nature Revealed. The most dangerous problems in relationships often do not look like problems at all to anyone. There is no obvious cheating, no dramatic fights, and absolutely no clear red flags visible to the untrained and unsuspecting eye. And yet deep down, something feels completely off. You sense a strange distance that you simply cannot explain or understand fully. What if the real issue is not what you see, but exactly what you are not currently trained to notice every day? This video is absolutely not about creating paranoia or unnecessary fear within your romantic relationships and daily life with your partner. Instead, it is about carefully understanding hidden behavioral patterns so you can stay grounded, calm, and completely far away from suspicion. We must set the tone carefully right now, because understanding human psychology requires patience, deep empathy, and a very open mind. Humans are biologically wired to avoid conflict whenever possible, protecting their emotional stability and preserving their carefully constructed social image constantly. Historically, maintaining multiple options was strongly linked to basic survival strategies in ancient environments where resources were scarce and highly unpredictable. This evolutionary background naturally leads to subtle, hidden behaviors that people use subconsciously to navigate their complex modern romantic relationships today. When individuals feel intense internal conflict, they do not always confess their mistakes. Instead, they compensate through very confusing psychological mechanisms. Let us explore the psychological framework behind these actions, blending evolutionary context with modern emotional dynamics to reveal the hidden truth. People naturally strive to maintain a flawless image, keeping their reputation intact, even when their private actions contradict their public personas. This instinct to protect oneself often creates an invisible barrier, preventing honest communication and fostering an environment of subtle, quiet deception. To truly understand these behaviors, we must look beyond the surface and analyze the deep psychological drivers shaping human romantic connections. Survival in the past required forming numerous alliances, a trait that sometimes manifests today as a subconscious desire for backup options. These ancient instincts clash violently with modern expectations of monogamy, creating a powerful cognitive dissonance within the minds of conflicted individuals. When actions and personal identity do not align perfectly, people automatically adjust their perception of reality rather than changing their behavior. This adjustment is a survival mechanism designed specifically to protect the ego from the crushing weight of profound guilt and shame. Understanding this framework is absolutely essential before we can accurately decode the specific strategies used to conceal betrayal in modern relationships. By recognizing these deep psychological roots, you empower yourself to see clearly through the dense fog of emotional manipulation and deceit. Now let us dive deeply into the 7 distinct patterns of behavior that reveal what remains hidden beneath a calm surface. The first major pattern involves emotional misdirection, where sudden, unexplained increases in affection act as a clever smokescreen for hidden guilt. You might suddenly receive unexpected gifts, overwhelming attention, and excessive care that feels slightly out of character for your romantic partner. While receiving kindness is not always bad, the broader context of these sudden gestures matters immensely when evaluating their true intentions. From a psychological perspective, deep internal guilt frequently triggers a strong subconscious need for immediate overcompensation to restore a moral balance. Sometimes, extreme kindness increases rapidly, not because things are genuinely right, but because something feels terribly wrong internally for that person. This overcompensation serves as a protective shield, distracting you from noticing the subtle cracks forming silently within the foundation of trust. By showering you with affection, they effectively silence their own conscience, while simultaneously blinding you to their hidden, questionable extracurricular activities. It is a brilliant yet destructive strategy, weaponizing love and care to build a fortress of plausible deniability around their secrets. Always remember to observe the timing of these grand gestures, as they often follow periods of unexplained absence or emotional distance. The second pattern involves normalizing a third party's presence, often referred to as using the best friend shield to deflect suspicion. They will introduce someone entirely new into your shared life very early, casually labeling them as just a friend or sibling. This calculated introduction is designed to lower your natural defenses and make the new person's constant presence seem completely harmless immediately. By bringing this person into the open, they effectively create a powerful layer of plausible deniability for any future suspicious interactions. Psychologically, familiarizing you with this individual reduces your suspicion significantly, even when absolutely nothing has been proven or explicitly discussed beforehand. You are subtly conditioned to accept their late-night texts and frequent meetups as entirely platonic, blinding you to the underlying danger. If you ever question this supposedly innocent relationship, you instantly risk appearing jealous, insecure, and unreasonably controlling in their manipulative eyes. This tactic brilliantly shifts the focus away from their inappropriate boundary crossing and places the heavy burden of guilt directly onto you. It is a masterful illusion of transparency, hiding a deeply secretive connection in plain sight where you least expect to look. The third pattern utilizes stability as a deceptive cover, manipulating daily routines to ensure that everything looks perfectly normal and unchanged. They rigidly maintain the exact same schedule and the exact same habits, projecting an aura of absolute reliability and steadfast commitment. However, if you observe closely, very small and subtle inconsistencies begin to appear beneath this carefully constructed facade of mundane predictability. An unexplained delay after work, a sudden change in phone passwords, or a slight shift in energy can reveal the truth. Consistency can sometimes be entirely real, or it can be a meticulously maintained surface designed specifically to prevent any unwanted questions. By keeping the major elements of their life identical, they create a comforting rhythm that lulls your intuition into a deep sleep. This routine manipulation is incredibly effective because we naturally associate stability and predictability with honesty, loyalty, and unwavering romantic devotion always. You must learn to look for the tiny disruptions in the matrix, the brief moments where the rehearsed script suddenly fails. These micro-inconsistencies are the vital clues that expose the exhausting effort required to live a double life behind closed doors daily. The fourth pattern is deflection and role reversal, commonly known as the guilt flip, a highly toxic defensive psychological communications strategy. When you finally gather the courage to question their suspicious behavior, they immediately twist the narrative so you become the problem. They will aggressively claim that you are overthinking everything, that you have changed negatively, or ask why you are so controlling. This is a classic psychological defense mechanism designed specifically to shift intense pressure and scrutiny entirely away from their own actions. By attacking your insecurities, the conversation swiftly moves from their questionable behavior directly to your emotional reaction and supposed mental instability. You find yourself desperately defending your own sanity instead of holding them accountable for the very real inconsistencies you previously noticed. This manipulative tactic relies heavily on your deep desire for harmony, forcing you to back down simply to restore temporary peace. It is crucial to recognize this guilt flip immediately, as it is one of the most glaring red flags of hidden betrayal. Stay firmly grounded in your reality and never allow their aggressive deflection to make you doubt your own valid, rational observations. The fifth pattern revolves around strict image management, heavily utilizing the powerful social media illusion to project an absolutely flawless relationship. They will frequently post public displays of extreme happiness, unyielding loyalty, and absolute perfection for their entire online audience to witness. However, while their digital footprint screams absolute devotion, their private behavior behind closed doors may differ drastically from this curated image. What is shown publicly on the internet is very often about managing public perception, rather than reflecting the actual, messy reality. By loudly broadcasting their supposedly perfect relationship, they create a strong psychological barrier against any accusations of infidelity or emotional neglect. Friends and family will naturally assume everything is wonderful, making it incredibly difficult for you to voice your very real concerns. This grand illusion effectively isolates you, as society tends to believe the beautifully filtered photographs over the complicated, painful, hidden truths. Do not let the shiny digital facade blind you to the emotional coldness that exists when the camera is finally turned off. True intimacy does not require constant public validation. It thrives quietly in the genuine moments shared solely between two committed partners. The sixth pattern is emotional displacement, where a partner begins secretly sharing their deepest thoughts, problems, and emotions with someone else. This subtle emotional replacement very often happens long before any actual physical betrayal occurs, making it incredibly dangerous and hard to detect. From an evolutionary angle, human beings naturally form strong, unbreakable bonds through deep emotional investment and shared vulnerabilities first and foremost. Severe relationship disconnection rarely starts physically. It almost always begins psychologically, when the emotional energy is quietly redirected toward an outsider. You may notice they no longer confide in you about their stressful day, choosing instead to text their new, understanding confidant. This invisible shift drains the lifeblood from your relationship, leaving an empty shell of routine interactions devoid of true emotional intimacy. Emotional affairs are highly destructive because they steal the core foundation of trust and mutual reliance that keeps a partnership strongly united. When confronted, they will quickly dismiss your concerns, claiming they are merely talking, completely ignoring the profound emotional betrayal taking place. Watch carefully where their emotional energy flows, for the heart always follows the mind, and the body will inevitably follow both. The seventh and final pattern involves using a strong moral identity as an impenetrable shield, adopting the flawless good person persona. They will constantly make very strong, unsolicited statements about their personal loyalty, high morality, and uncompromising integrity to anyone who listens. This deliberate projection has a profound effect. It significantly reduces suspicion by creating a powerful psychological halo effect around their character. Psychologically, this constant identity signaling creates mental shortcuts for others, fostering unearned trust simply because they aggressively claim to be righteous. The stronger and louder the projected image of purity, the less likely people are to critically question their actual, hidden behaviors. They loudly condemn cheating in others, using their vocal outrage as the perfect camouflage for their own quiet, ongoing moral failings. This hypocrisy is incredibly hard to spot because we naturally want to believe that people who preach goodness are inherently good. However, true integrity is always silent. It is consistently demonstrated through quiet actions over time, never through loud, defensive verbal declarations. When their words and actions violently contradict, always trust the actions, for words are easily manipulated to construct a convenient lie. To truly elevate our understanding, we must deeply analyze why these specific behavioral patterns exist and persist in modern human relationships. Humans are constantly struggling to simultaneously manage their chaotic internal conflicts, their fragile social images, and their deeply rooted emotional needs. The core psychological mechanism driving all of this deception is cognitive dissonance, a painful state of mental tension requiring immediate relief. When a person's deceitful actions and their perceived righteous identity do not match, they instinctively adjust their perception to survive emotionally. They rarely change their bad behavior. Instead, they build complex mental justifications to convince themselves that they are still good people. This internal lie is then projected outward through the 7 patterns we discussed. creating a web of confusion for their partners. Evolutionary history also plays a massive role. Maintaining multiple social bonds historically increased our ancestors' chances of survival in harsh environments. While we live in a modern, civilized world, those ancient primal instincts still whisper quietly in the dark corners of our minds. Understanding this deep biological and psychological truth removes the blinding anger, allowing you to view their betrayal with cold, analytical clarity. You begin to realize that their deception is rarely about your flaws, but rather a reflection of their own internal chaos. This profound shift in perspective is the absolute key to protecting your own mental health and reclaiming your personal emotional power. Now that we thoroughly understand these complex patterns, we must discuss exactly what grounded actions you should take to protect yourself. First and foremost, you must keep your approach entirely non-paranoid. Panic will only cloud your judgment and push the truth away. Do not overreact to single, isolated events or minor mistakes, as everyone occasionally displays confusing behavior without any malicious intent whatsoever. Instead, train your eyes to look for repeating patterns over a long period of time, observing how different behaviors connect together. Carefully observe the critical alignment between their spoken words and their physical actions. Inconsistencies here are the most revealing warning signs. Pay close attention to the stark contrast between their steady consistency and sudden, inexplicable contradictions in their daily routines and stories. Remember this core principle always. True clarity comes from observing consistent patterns, absolutely never from obsessing over isolated, confusing, stressful moments. Document your quiet observations mentally or physically, trusting your own intuition when the pieces of the puzzle slowly begin to fit. When you possess undeniable proof of a pattern, approach the conversation calmly, armed with logic rather than explosive, uncontrollable emotional reactions. By remaining perfectly composed, you completely neutralize their ability to use the guilt flip, forcing them to confront their own actions. This grounded approach ensures that you maintain your dignity and self-respect, regardless of the painful truths that may eventually be uncovered. As we conclude, remember that maintaining healthy trust is absolutely not blind. True awareness is definitely not the same as paranoia. You do not need to assume the worst about your partner constantly, poisoning your mind with endless, baseless, and exhausting suspicions. But you also absolutely do not need to ignore what repeats itself right in front of your eyes over and over. Do not focus heavily on what people loudly say or proudly show to the world. Focus on what consistently reveals itself. Thank you for watching Female Nature Revealed today. Stay observant, trust your intuition, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.